see if this works. Yay. 2 seconds ago I had a stream. That's completely correct. That's me. And we just need some people watching and we're all set to go. Let me know if you're already there, because tools are slow, like really, really slow. I think I've got everything ready. Just need my tools to, on one screen it says we have 3 people watching, on another screen it says 0, so it's somewhere in between, 1.5 I guess. Just give me something to work with. So this is the master dashboard. Stream manager, what does it say? It says I'm live, I know. Yes, we have somebody here, see? We have 3 viewers. I don't know why the other app isn't updating. There's so many apps and stuff, but I'll just start from the start. It's where we start every time. Good evening. Thank you. Infinite Erics. Yeah, I'm going to remove that. That's too much. I think 1 is more than enough. I'm going to talk about color and contrast. Probably one of the most famous WCAG criteria, I think. Could be. When people talk about accessibility, they often talk about color and contrast. They will grab some random tool and say, hey, but your color and contrast isn't right. Please fix your contrast first. But what does it actually mean? What does the number actually mean? So I'm going to start with, what does it mean? And you see I'm actually doing this in the browser, because this PC is so new, I don't even have PowerPoint yet. I'm just going to do it like this, page fit. Yeah, so let's talk about me first. That's a good part, right? That's where we should always start. My name is Erik. I am trained to be a photographer, so I learned a little bit about color, also as a visual artist and creative coder. But these days I work as an accessibility specialist and a front-end developer at ING. A bank you might know. I hope so, that saves me some explaining. And I used to be an online fabric store owner, so I can show you that for a second. This website is no longer mine, but I made it. Yeah, I made pretty much everything that was here and is here. There's a lot of new pictures, new images, but the basics is that I made this website. I was the designer for many parts. I thought of colors and contrast, and I started by what every good developer should do. No, you shouldn't. I started making my own design system, I sort of started making my own color palettes and accessible colors and everything. I way overdid it just before we sold it, so it's good that we sold it, or I would have spent a lot of time on this. So that was actually the starting point for me. I learned more about color and contrast actually working with it than being an accessibility specialist. I think it's often very interesting to look at something from a different viewpoint. As a specialist, you usually come up too late with ideas on how to improve things. But when you are part of the development process or the design process, you come up with new stuff. You find ways that are the ways that your guidelines are actually used. And I think that's really interesting. So, to recap, what is the actual criterion we're looking at? Text has a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. Except large text, then it should be at least 3.0 to 1. Up until I started designing, I didn't know much about this number. You know, you just grab this random tool and it says if you're correct or not. It's rather easy. I can show you the official criterion. 1.4.3 contrast minimum. It's used in multiple places now. I'll share this link. This is, by the way, one of the best ways to explore WCAG. quick references. You can see everything here. And it says the visual presentation of text and images of text has a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1, except for the following. And then they say large text, which is basically 16 pixels and bold. No, even more, sorry, 19 pixels and bold, or 24 pixels and non-bold. Very large text you need for that. And then there's text of images, and you've got logos, but they often don't apply. So this is basically what it says. You should reach 4.5 for normal text. So I'm just going to grab a random website here, the most popular one for many people. I don't have anything against this website. It's just a really easy way to show you how this works. You see there's text everywhere. So I'm using Firefox, but I think you can do the same in Chrome at the moment. You can take any word. You can say inspect. Oh, I said inspect element. And then I'm going to drag this up a bit. And you see many stuff. So I'm going to select the right text node. Is this one? Learn more? No, it's the actual text node in the strong. And somewhere they say what color you're using. I'm just going to see if it's easy accessible in this one. See, I'm just doing this at random. I haven't opened this website before to check these kind of things, but here it says the color. It says RGB 17, 17, 17. So it takes a little bit of white into your black, and it's inherited. So if it's inherited, you would expect it to see it somewhere here. Color inherit. I only see color inherit. Oh, it's the 111 here. Okay. So what you get when you click this, I'm not getting it. Oh, because it's inherited. They use proper CSS. That's a bummer. Let's see if this one is easier. So I'm going to pick a different element. Oh, much easier. Okay, so now we have this link, learn more. And in my inspector, I see when I hover it, it gets a color, this nice orange tint. And when I click it in my Firefox, it opens an inspector and it says, haha, your contrast is 3.97. So that's less than 4.5. So for standard text, that is too low. And it also says it with a nice exclamation mark that not everybody sees. And it says, does not meet WCAG standards for accessible text. Calculated against background, RGBA. It even takes the alpha channel for some reason in this case. And it suggests 216, 247, 235. So it even gives you a suggestion of a darker text. So if you use this text in a darker shade, it should be okay for WCAG. But it still doesn't tell you what does this number mean. It just says it's insufficient. And that's the good thing about writing audits. You can just say, hey, whatever you're doing here, I don't know what it is. I don't really care what you're doing. I just got this number here, and you're not meeting this number. So make the contrast higher. Make one color darker, the other brighter, or maybe both. Often I also use a tool for this. So the most popular one is the color contrast analyzer, I think. This application. It has a foreground color that you can pick. There's this picker icon right here. And it gets an enlarger, and we get really close into the text. It's kind of complicated when you get text like this. You see the anti-aliasing. You see all these pixels. So I'm just going to grab a big text. This one, it should be good. You know, this text is black or very dark. Oh, I can still misclick. Thank you, motor skills. So I'm trying to get the darkest pixels. I could also get the value from CSS, but this is the challenging way. So it says 111, 111, the same that we had before. I'll pick the background just to be sure it's white. Yeah. And it says here a contrast ratio of 18.9 to 1. That's a lot. That's good. That's really dark text on a really bright background. For some people, it might even be too bright, but it should work. This should work. And this is a tool used by many people. You can also put in color values here. You can even open up the sliders with this button. And the color contrast always shows here, and you get these marks for passing or not passing. I can also use this one by Leah Farouk. Oh, let me share the URL to this one first in the chat. So this one is really popular. I use it on Mac as well. That's what I use it on the most for my work. And then we've got this one by Leah Farouk. It's called contrastratio.com. I can do the same thing basically. So I can say, hey, I had white background and a dark text color. and it says 18.88. It gets very, very detailed. Even you need a 4.5, it takes 2 decimals. And the nice thing is it's a ratio, so it doesn't matter what I do. I can also put the 111 here and the FFF here, and it still gives you the same number. It just swaps it around, and it's basically the same. A new tool I also rather like is this one, leonardocolor.io. It's made by somebody from Adobe, I believe, and you can create a whole series of colors. So here it says, hey, I want my base color to be white. Then I want a contrasting color at 3.0, then one at 4.5, and I say, let's make it a nice 9. I'll get into these numbers later, but just to give an impression. And then you go 21. So, and you don't need 20. And now you've got this nice range of colors. And you will know that compared to a white background, this one will have 3.0, 4.5, 7, 9, 13, and 21. So this is a really nice way to make a whole palette. And the thing is, there are really tons and tons of color tools out there. See, now somebody says WebAIM. Yeah, I think that's when you use color contrast. Maybe it's even the first one, WebAIM. Contrast checker, WebAIM, yeah. So you have a foreground color. That's the text we have. Oh, wait, the text was 1.1. And the background was white, and it says also 18.88. And here, so also it gives you the passes. So WCAG AA, level AA, it passes. That's the one we were looking at. For normal text, it passes. For large text, it passes. Graphical objects, that's even newer in WCAG 2.1. And there's the whole explanation, and there's another tool mentioned. And I'll show you one last one. Leonardo we had. And then there's 8 shapes. I'll also give you a link to this one. I really like this one for palettes as well. Here you can see a whole grid. And when you're starting an actual palette, or you've got a design system, or whatever, you're working with lots of colors, this is really useful because you can input your colors here on the left. Maybe I can zoom even in a little bit more. I've got the URL in chat if you want to check it for yourself. Let's call that an alternative. To the left, you can input your colors. To the right, you get this table, and they compare every color with every color. So, for example, if you have a white background, and you use 888888 for your text, then the contrast ratio is 3.5. So that's enough for large text, but not for normal text. And it's really easy to see in this grid. And then you go down one, hey, 3.1, that's also sufficient. And that's on a slightly darker background. So that's still okay. But if I go an even darker background, it says 3.6. That doesn't meet. And I should mention here, and I should mention it often, and you should remember, this is a minimum requirement. This is not perfect. They are actually working on the formula behind this. And they are using a different system right now, and things might change in the future. But let this be a guideline at least. It works better than nothing. And it gives an impression, but don't let it be holy. Like, don't aim for a 3.0, try to go higher than that. Don't aim for 4.5, try to aim higher than that. It's a minimum requirement. But when you do look for the minimum requirement and you want a starting point, this grid is really good. So you see, for example, 888 on charcoal is 2.9. If I were working with this design system, I would say, hey, could you maybe change one of these colors and change it a little bit so we can reach the 3.0 or even better? Because this is really close to meeting the criteria. I mean, 1.6, that's pretty much hopeless. 3 here, really nice. But 2.9, that feels too close. So I really like this tool. If you have a lot of colors, this gives an insight. I use this at my work as well. And I input all the colors that we had at ING. And we came to the conclusion that we had very few colors to actually work with. So we had a lot of colors. The palette was really big. But when you looked at accessible color combinations, like what colors can we actually use for text, very little remained. So this is a really good tool for that. And then we can even look at this ratio number. Where does it come from? Understanding 1.4.3. This is what I did when I was working with these colors. I go to the official success criterion. I see, hey, how does this work? Okay. So for people with color deficiencies, hue and saturation have minimal or no effect on legibility as assessed by reading performance. Knoblauch et al. 1991. So you get these formal links. And then there's this 18 point or 14 point bold. See American Printing House for the Blind Guidelines for Large Printing and the Library of Congress Guidelines for Large Print under Resources. So they throw in these fancy resources. And I think I can get there from here. And if you actually dive in, it's really complicated, and it made me wonder. It really made me wonder, like, where does this all come from? And then I saw this. What is the contrast ratio? It's the lightness of the relative luminance of one color plus 0.05, and the relative luminance of a second color plus 0.05, and then the first divided by the second, and that gives you a number. And that didn't help me much yet. So I looked further. I used this information, of course, but I looked further. What is then relative luminance? I'm not even sure if it's going to point me the right way. I think the link doesn't even work. Relative luminance. Yeah. So notes on the formula. And then I saw the conversion from nonlinear to linear RGB values is based on this IEC spec, a standard default color space for the internet. And then the formula is based on an ISO spec, and then another ANSI ISO spec. Oh no, ANSI HFES. When you look into these things, you often cannot even open them. You have to pay for these documents to see the actual spec they are based on. It was a real puzzle. And in the end, I ended up, let me see if I can find it quickly. I ended up on Wikipedia, because everything ends up at Wikipedia. I think this is even the way you can get there. Contrast vision. Oh, it's not there. Display contrast. Luminance. I'm sorry that this looks really messy, but it was a messy way to find this out. It was actually a very specific color space that I ended up in. Yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of stuff that's not gonna lead me anywhere. So at least the point is, oh, I got a question. Let's handle this first. Is there also a success criterion for maximum contrast? Because there is the thing called scotopic sensitivity syndrome or Eland syndrome. Yeah, resulting to sensitivity to glare and stark contrasts, blur textures. Yeah. So people can actually have an issue with high contrast, and I'm familiar with this. I know somebody who has this issue as well. It's really complicated because when we talk about design, we talk black on white or white on black. That's our default basically. But there is no criteria for it or criterion. Probably because people can also change their display. You know, they can set it darker or lessen the contrast. There are a lot of tools that can help them. I did try to do this for my own website. I used dark gray text on a light gray background, just for these people that might be annoyed by black on white. And if you actually start looking at a lot of big websites that have text, for example, Medium. I hope it also works on the front page. But if you look at Medium, they usually don't use black. Yeah, see, here it is with a bit of... they use a bit of opacity. Usually they take a tint lighter than actual black. So what do they use? They used often 28, 28, 28 or something like that, or for all threes. I'm gonna pick I'm gonna get the color contrast analyzer again just to see what this ends up to be. Yeah, this is 29, 29. Well, right in between what I mentioned. So they don't go full black. They go a slightly lighter tint of gray. It's really, really dark. I mean, without context, you would say that's black. But they tested it, and apparently this is easier for people to read. So actually, a lot of people don't like to have black on white or white on black. And a lot of big sites use this. So if you look at blogging sites, if you look at news websites, often they tend to use slightly off colors and not the actual colors, black and white. Twitch chat in dark mode caused an issue for quite a few people. Pure white text on pure black. Yeah, I can imagine. A lot of color themes are not actually accessible. I mean, it's still a theme, so you can pick your own in theory, but you want to be accessible, I guess. So you want to give some options. So you have some multiple ways to consume your content. So here I show the tools as well, so you can check it in the browser. You can check these different tools. It was always just a number to me, like 3.0, and it might be nice at this point to also mention the maximum. I already closed my color tool. I open and close it so many times a day. Like if you have black on white, like this is the maximum contrast ratio you can have, is 21. So your ratio will be somewhere between, don't mind the presentation, 1 to 1 or 21 to 1. So that's the biggest ratio you can get. And then I'm gonna put this way. Yeah, so that's the number you get, something in between. Usually it's closer to 3.0 because people like to skip around the borders. So back to the fabric store. Do I get gifts in this presentation? No, I don't. Well, she pulls open the closet and a lot of stuff comes out. So this is Pippi Longstocking. And that's just basically what the fabric store was like. We had all these fabrics at home. It was a mess inside the house, but also the website. I'm just going to take a snip here. So the starting point we had for the website was a WordPress site. It was WooCommerce for the shopping part. There was a theme. I made a child theme, and then I started adding extensions, and then I made changes to the child theme, and I think we had 2 versions of Bootstrap running. So all in all, it was a mess, but I tried to make it at least a little bit of an accessible mess. Because, hey, that's what I do, and that's what I spend too much time on, so that's what I was trying to do with the colors as well. So I went for the robust fix, the paper umbrella over the outside electronics. And clean this up the right way was the idea. Start with a color palette, easy, that's what I thought. Well, I didn't come much further than this. So then we have Neon Cat with some colors and an accessible color palette. That's what we went for. And it got really, really complicated. So another meme, one does not simply pick a color. How many color spaces are there? So I dove into it and I hope, it's probably in my notes somewhere. Which color space does WCAG use? So this is basically the question I asked this before. I had this as a live presentation. I asked people, what color space does WCAG use? Well, a lot of people don't even know what a color space is. Like how do colors even work? Most people work with RGB. That's one. If you use HTML and CSS, you might know ASL, HSL even. If you use Photoshop, you've got another variation. You've got HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness. You've got CMYK if you work with print. But there are a ton of color spaces. And it ended up that WCAG, because all the options you're going to mention, it's wrong basically. There's no logical answer. WCAG, there's so much to tell about colors. I could fill hours with this. HSL sounds really good. I don't know if you ever used it, but if you come from RGB, I cannot make RGB colors up. I mean, I've worked with them quite some time now, so I get a bit of a feeling for them. Like, I know this is an orange tint. I know if I want black, I want zeros. And if I want white, I get Fs. And I know it's RGB, so I got 3 values. So I could make pure red, or pure green, or pure blue. Like it's, but anything in between pure colors, it's probably going to be some sort of brown mess. RGB is not intuitive. HSL is much better for that. Why? Because it works with this nice sort of rainbow of colors, and people really like working with that. But WCAG does not use it. Why? Because if you look at HSL, you've got 2 colors with the same saturation, 100% saturation, 50% luminance, but the one is 240 hue and the other is 60 hue. In theory, these colors would be just as bright. They have the same saturation, the same luminance. They are almost the same. But to the human eye, the light, or the yellow one is much, much, much brighter. That's why we have dark text on the yellow one. And the blue one is actually much darker. And that's why we have white text on the blue one. Hue, saturation, lightness, it's not consistent. So if you look at the relative luminance that WCAG uses all along the whole rainbow of colors, basically, you will see that it varies a lot. So the blue colors tend to feel really dark, and the yellow colors tend to feel really light. And that's just because how the human eye works, and it's different than HSL. So, for example, these are WCAG colors. I picked a 3.0 here, a 4.5 and a 7.0 because that's the AAA requirement. They have the same hue, they have the same saturation, but this is the change to lightness, and it doesn't feel intuitive. I had to go from 68% to 47 to 36, and these feel like random numbers already, but it gets even worse because this is in red, and if I chose these same colors but for different parts of the rainbow, in yellow I would not get 3.0, I go 1.1, then in green 1.3, 1.2, 4.8, 2.6, like these numbers are all over the place. I go both darker and lighter than the original red tint. And the same goes for the middle. I mean, 4.5 could also be 1.2, but also 9.3. 7.0 sounds really good. That's a really good value. That's really readable. But it could also be 2.1 when it becomes yellow. And it can be 12.4 in blue. That's really good, but you cannot depend on HSL for colors when you look at WCAG. So this is all measured and made in Photoshop. And so where does it come from? It's this one was this is the one I was looking for. ITUR recommendation B2709. Now that's a mouthful. And this is what I came up through all the W3C specs and everything. I came up with this term, and I looked it up, and I was like, is this seriously? So you've got this web standard that determines accessibility, and it standardizes the format of high-definition television having 16:9 aspect ratio. The first edition of the standard was approved in 1990. So this is basically a standard for widescreen television from the start of the 90s. It was probably created in the 80s even. I know how fast standards can move, looking at WCAG. This is where the formula comes from. This is the formula they use for relative luminance. So it's not HSL. It's not part of CSS or any spec, It's widescreen television, high definition widescreen. It's at least it's high definition. I don't know how that changes the colors in any way, but that's where the number comes from. And that's what my Dick brought up. Thanks for digging into colors. Trust me, don't start with it. It's a lot of work. So you get this spec from video, high definition video, made in the 90s, and it determines the contrast ratio. And this was basically me face palming. I was like, how does this even add up? It is a television standard. It has the same color coverage as sRGB, so that's pretty good. So I'm not going to tell you how these graphs work. Again, you could dive into colors, but it's a mess and it's a lot of work. But basically, this triangle represents this spec, and it's the same as sRGB that we use in screens. So that's pretty good. It has a component called Luma. So where RGB consists of red, green, and blue. One of the three things that makes this spec is Luma, and that's relative luminance. And that was really useful. And it's a way to measure brightness in sRGB that takes the human eye in account. So it starts to sound much more logical than it did in the first place. But still, it's very confusing. So they have these components, and they have the Luma coefficient. So this one is really good. You'll see if you dive into a lot of formulas, you'll find this. Let me get that even bigger. You'll find Luma, which is a Y and the apostrophe. There's probably a really good mathematical term for this, but it's been really long since I dove into mathematics. Derivative for something. I'm just gonna copy it. That's why we have chat, so you can find everything back in the chat. And it's for luminance, so that's really good. So here they say this. So it is worth noting that recommendation 709, that's the one we're looking at, and sRGB share the same primary chromatics and white point chromaticity. However, sRGB is explicitly output display referred with an equivalent gamma of 2.2. Okay, so again, it's a lot of technical talk, but it's actually quite a logical one. So I'm just gonna skip the moving images, they don't work anyway. But it's not the luma that matters. The luma itself doesn't say anything. It's what you do with it. Hey, it's a contrast ratio. And this is where things really got interesting for me. I never really stumbled upon this word ratio. And what does the word ratio in this mean? It's not just a number. I mean, when I think of black on white, it's ratio from 21 to 1. That's already really good. The important part here is that black is actually 21 times as dark as white. So when you look at this slide, it's 21 to 1. It means 21 times as dark as white. And white is 21 times as bright as black. My tongue is gonna trip for many times in this one. So the range we work with is always 21. So I'm just gonna put a paint here. Can I paint? I hope I can paint. So basically, the darkest you can get is black. Where do I put it at the top? I have no idea. Do Photoshop shortcuts work here? I don't know. So you've got black here at the bottom. Yay! This block resembles white. And I'm gonna... Do I have a text tool? I do. I have a text tool. This is the best graphics you're ever gonna get. So 1.0 is the best you can do. This is like the lightest. How can I save this? I never use paint. I never use paint. So this is 1.0. And this is... Let me put it next to it. 21.0. So fancy graphics. This means that if you have a gray tint that's exactly in the middle. I don't know if it's a part of my slide. Yeah. So a color that is 3.0 to 1 on white. So you've got like this grayish tint. This is not correct, but just for the idea of it, it would be somewhere over here. 3.0. It's really bad to read, but it's not large text. You could have it about here. So you have this gray color. And it has a ratio of 3.00 to 1 when you compare it to white. That also means it has a 7.0 ratio to black. Because 21 divided by 3 is 7. And I told myself this many times before I actually understood it and I actually grasped this. But that also means you could have a darker color, let's say dark gray, because we're keeping it in the grays. And I take the text tool again. And let's say this is 9.0 to 1. That means this tool, this color is 9.0 to 1, so it's 3.0 to 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. So the ratio here is the same. And it's actually 9 to actual white. But when you compare it to black, 21 divided by 9, I'll even do it for you. 21 divided by 9 is 2.33333. Nowhere in WCAG will this be useful. So when you have a pretty dark shade of gray, that's 9.0 to 1, you can put it on a white background. You can even put it on a light gray background if you use large text, but you will never be able to use it on a black background. And that's when I started to think more about the ratio. Okay, so 3 to 0 on white is 7 to 1. 7 to 1 on black. But then you have 4.5. So I think I can remove these things again. Take a really big brush. Does this work? Yeah. Oh, this is really nice graphics. I'm just going to do this differently. I now understand why a lot of business people make their their data visualizations in PowerPoint. I mean, it's a messy tool, but it works better than this. And it's free for them. So let's say we have a different tint of gray. This tint of gray is 4.5 on white. And this is really nice because 4.5 is the darkness, the relative luminance, where you can use it for small text. So you have a nice tint of gray that you can use for small text, and it has 4.5 to 1. They're pretty happy with that. That's good to have in your design system. You have a color that you can use on a white background, and you probably have a lot of white backgrounds because it's basically the default of the internet. I mean, I've got the Twitch app open. It has a white background. It's the default. But 4.5 and 21, can I also use this on a black background? So that's, we can just grab the calculator. We can say 21 divided by 4.5. It's 4.666667 somewhere. That's more than 4.5. So it is actually possible to pick a color for small text that can be used on both a white and a black background, which is really, really nice. If you're looking at a palette and you say, hey, I want both white and black backgrounds, try to pick your colors so that you can use them on white and black both. I mean, it's yeah, so you can do 21 divided by 4.5, you get the same. And 21 divided by 4.666667, you get back to 4.5. So somewhere between 4.5 and 4.666667 is this like cantilever point, this point of where you can use the color on both black and on white. That's perfect for a lot of designers, except nobody uses that. Yeah, this is the point. This is like a screenshot from Avengers. I'm not even sure which one this is because I'm really bad with names right now. But this is where I got my mind blown. This is where it really, really, really dropped for me, because that also means that you have only 3 shades that fit with 3.0 to 1. So let's say you use large text and you say, hey, I'm going to find colors with 3.0 to 1. You can do 1 to 3, you know, what I just did with the light gray. You have 3.0 to 1, that's easy. You can have 9.0 a color. But when you try to triple that 9, I'm just going to show it. 9 times 3 is 27. 9 times 3, that's 27. That's more than 21. So if you look in this field of play of 1 and 21, you cannot fit in more colors than this. So if you're creating a color palette with a white background, you can do a 3.1 color or a 3.0 color and a 9.0 color, but you cannot go beyond that. There's only 2 shades and 2 steps when you start at one side of the spectrum. And that really is really influential in how many colors you can pick. And if you look at 4.5, it's actually the same story. There's only 3 shades. You can go, just one, bright white. You can go halfway. And 4.5 times 4.5 is 20.25. So that's just a little bit less than 21. So you can only have 3 shades if you want to be accessible. And if you want to be able to combine the shades, that's the most important part, of course. And if you use 7.7 to 1, this is if you want WCAG AAA, so if you want to have really good colors for your text, you go for 7 to 1. You only have 2 shades. You can use 7.0 to 1, so you have a text on a white background, but nothing can be combined with the 7 anymore. Nothing goes above it, because 7 times 7 is 49. That's more than 21. So it's the whole ratio story. It's like this eye opener. I finally understood what the ratio stood for. It's about brightness. So what did I really like? What I thought was a good palette was I made this one. Oh, you recognize it too. It's a screenshot from 8 Shapes. I thought, what would be logical steps? Well, you could start with a white background, and maybe even off-white. But on the white background, if there's one thing you would like, is a text that's at least 4.5. So you get the shade 7.2, I think that's a really good gray shade to start with. You could make it slightly darker, so it gets 4.66667, the one we mentioned before. But somewhere around that middle point, you want a gray shade, because that's really flexible. Maybe you want to have a AAA color as well. You end up with 555, which is also really useful. You can use it on a white background. But if you have a AAA shade on a white background, you also want a AAA shade on a black background. And that's exactly the other way around. That's 21 divided by 7, so that's 3. And that's this 3. So you can use this on black. Let's see if that's... Yeah, this one here, 4.6. So if you have a light gray text on a black background, you could use this. And I have to note here that even though I say black, the black isn't even real black. I picked 28, 28, 28, really close to the medium number we saw before. So this is 4.6 on a really dark gray background. So it works both ways. And well, you can dive in these numbers some more. I'll let me see. Can I share this some way? I think I have a link at the end. But this is a really useful starting point for a palette, and you can even add more colors. But I really like these steps. You have the 3 to 1, the 4.5 to 1, and the 7 to 1. And this 1.9 is actually 7 divided by 3, I think. Let's check it to make sure. No, that's the 2.3. Where was it? Oh yeah, this is the 7. So you have a really light shade of gray as well that you can use on a dark background, and you have a really dark shade that you can use on a slightly lighter background. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps that offer a lot of flexibility. I think this could be a great starting point for any color palette or design system. See, this is the same thing, but I changed it to a blue tint. You still see the same contrast numbers. It's still compared to the same relative luminance, but they are actual colors. I mean, what's a color palette without color? I guess it's not really much. So I made a thing. Yeah, this link is already old. When I made this presentation, I thought, yeah, I want to build my own color tool. So I'm going to share the link here. I never finished it. I guess that's the thing with personal projects. People make palettes and color tools all the time. Yeah, gray palette instead of a color palette, exactly. I made my own tool because what I really missed after seeing all this was a tool for a designer. I mean, for example, I really like using this tool when I do an audit, but I don't get suggestions. You know, if I have a black background and I have something really dark, let's say we have a really dark gray, it says, yeah, it doesn't meet. Okay, but now what? What do I tell my designer? What's the best alternative then? Is there another color I can suggest? So that's something I really miss in a lot of audit tools, that they can tell you if it's good or bad, but they don't give you another suggestion. And the good thing is, I think Firefox does this. That's what we just saw, right? So if I inspect this, it says, hey, 1.32, but it also gives you this exclamation mark, and it says, hey, does not meet standard. Oh, it doesn't even give an alternative this time. Last time we had an alternative. I know, yeah, and it links to color contrast. That's really nice, but it doesn't help me right now. So I'm just going to show this in Chrome because I know Chrome does this as well in a slightly different way. Sorry that I'm switching so many windows and stuff. I'm even going to show a new window. Yeah, somebody says it as well. Chrome DevTools should show you. I know. I thought Firefox did it there as well, but maybe it's in a different part of the window. I'm just going to show you Chrome. Everybody uses Chrome anyway. I'm the outlier with using Firefox. So, increasing size of everything. I'm going to show the CSS properties. So I have a little bit of text selected. It's the same color contrast ratio I had before. But now I'm going to click this. Ha! And we also don't get a suggestion. I think it's the way it works with Alpha, the way it's styled and the background works. You see, there's no area here. It just says, it should show a ratio here. I'm not sure what it's. No, it doesn't show any alternatives. Well, with a lot of colors on many websites, you will get an alternative. Yeah, let's put it like that. So if I pick this one, accessibility, is it in a separate tab now? No, it's not. Ah, funny. Well, often in Chrome, you can just check this. It says you check the single color. Yeah, but it should calculate it against the background that's actually there, right? It is grayed out. Maybe there's something about the background color. Blackie. What's that? There are a lot of different colors set. I think it should keep in mind what the actual background is at this point. But we can We're just gonna check Amazon again, just for the idea of seeing what they do. No, don't change anything, don't touch anything. So I just pick a random element here. It says it's blue, and now it should probably... Yeah, here, this is much better. It says the contrast ratio is 5.74, which is really good. And it says it's 4.5. See, 4.5 is the minimum they should have for the criterion that we just saw, and 7.0 is the minimum if you want AAA. It doesn't mean AAA, but you see this graph, and this graph is where the magic happens. You see it's currently between these two lines. That means it's between 4.5 and 7.0. If I put it just above here, it says, hey, it's 4.17. That's not enough. I move it inside. It says 4.76. That's enough. 6.69. That's still enough for AA, but not for triple. And then here it passes the boundary, and it's even enough for AAA. So that's in Chrome really useful. I'm just gonna switch back to Firefox to not lose whatever I was doing. So yeah, I made a tool as well, and what I really like about this is that I wanted to make a suggestion. I think it's even easier now with the new CSS pack coming up. It allows you a lot more with luminance. It adds a lot of more of math. I think it's even, if I look at it like this, I'm not used to high zoom levels. Yeah, it doesn't show yet. I think I can call it CSS4, and then we will see it. Evolution of CSS4. Yeah. Oh, here it says. Evolution of CSS4 color. Is this a presentation? Oh, then I have to go through all this. This is really good source, by the way. Chris Lilly knows a lot about color. He's also connected to the whole change of a possible new theory to work with for WCAG colors. Not coming up yet, but it also says here in the preview it works with CIE Lab, which is a different color space. And this color space actually makes it able to measure the contrast as well. So if you're using the newest CSS4 in the near future, I hope, you can actually create accessible color palettes in your CSS file. I'm really looking forward to that. Until the time you have to make either crappy tools like this or use tools that you can find, because this works as well. And you can also see here it works with different color models. I'm just gonna link a blog post as well. I think there's a really nice one. Where is it? No, I'm just gonna share this. There's this color space called HS Love. And it's a really, I just shared the name in the chat because this is a really useful color space as well. It tries to be consistent in the brightness. So I have the saturation here set to 100, luminance to 50, and whatever color you pick, they should stay the same. So this is also really a joy to work with. So it's what they say, HS Love is a human-friendly alternative to HSL. You can check the website. There's a lot of information about color here. I read most of it. There's a comparison here to other schemes like HSL, and you see where it falls short. There's so much information here. Color, the funny thing is, when you look at color at first, you see this criterion, you think, oh, that's easy. Everybody starts with contrast. They say, oh, that's easy. You just measure a number. You say if it's good enough. But when you really dive into color, it's such a big world. There's so much to learn about how brightness works, how the actual contrast works. And yeah, the website is still a mess. I mean, I tried my best to create this color palette, but we actually sold off the web store before I could fix everything. So I still have a lot of thoughts about color. I just couldn't put it into the code that we had. There are the links that I already shared, I think. Yeah, the color tool. I'm just going to go back to the ratio once more, just to yeah, so once more for the people that checked in later, this is the most important thing that I think for designers, is that the color contrast ratio is an actual ratio. So if you have your brightness, you have the brightest white, you have a 1.0, and your darkest black, it's actually 20 times as dark as your brightest. And if you have a contrast ratio of 4.5 to 1, it's 4.5 times as dark as 1, which means you have this space to work in. And between 21 and 1, there are only a limited amount of numbers. And this really controls what you can do with color and how many colors you can come up with. So let's see if I can... No, that doesn't work. So if I look at my own website, I didn't pick pure white. I picked a slightly darker color of gray. But these are also logical steps so that you stay within these 21 steps. You can't do anything else but that. And you can change in color, for example. You can make this blue, you can make this yellow, whatever you like. But if you just keep these contrast steps the same, you will always stay within these two colors. And that's the range you have to work with. So if you want to work with a 4.5 ratio, both on white and black, you don't have much luminance to play with. You don't have much saturation to play with. You can play with the hue. You can do a lot of that. You should do a lot with that. And I don't think all websites should be black on white or white on black. So you get a lot more creative than that with the palette. But the ratio you're actually working with is limited. So can we find the color palette quickly? HTML color codes. No way. Somebody name a design system. There are too many design systems. But it also shows you. I just looked. You can do a lot with you. Yeah, that's a great quote. I'm going to keep that. There are so many tools for color because there's so much to be said about color. Are we going to find one here? UX pin. Medium. Why do we land up at medium? I don't want material design. Certainly not UX design. Carbon design system. What do they have? See, they also have these colors. They have a 4.5. So this one, Interactive 03, can be used on both a black and a white background. We know this because it's 4.5. Or it meets 4.5. It doesn't say what the actual ratio is, right? It doesn't say. Well, anyway, if you're designing, again, back to the designing, you're going to have a few shades of gray. And my experience so far is that you have a lot of shades. You're going to have too many. I had like, what did we have in the Leonardo? 6 or something, 7? I found this to be a pretty practical amount of shades. I mean, you can use large text in gray. You can use normal text in gray. You can even use darker gray in 2 shades on white. It gives you a lot of freedom. Then if you take a shade darker, you can still use a lot of these colors. And you see there are quite some, you know, these red signs. It says D and P. These are the ones that don't meet the criterion. But this one says AA for large text, AA 18. 18 stands for 18 points because in the criteria it says points and not pixels because somehow people decided to measure things in points. This is 24 pixel text. This is large text. So this one works for large text, normal text AA, normal text AAA, AAA. Perfect. This one is a bit more limited, but it's still usable. This one is usable, this one is usable. This one is usable, 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 usable. Just look at your own color palette. Please tweet your own color palette to me. I would like to share it. Enter your own color palette in 8 shapes and see how many colors you can actually use. Because my experience is that if you look at a lot of color palettes, if you put them in here, there's not much left that you can use. A lot of colors, especially the bright peppy colors, they want them on a white background. They're going to be too bright. I hardly ever meet UXers that like a dark background. So all the shades that are above, let's say above 4.5, they're going to be too dark for normal text. And you're going to find, you're going to have a hard time finding designers that want to use that dark type of text. They don't like dark mode often. They need some pushing. They like white and bright and peppy and preppy and all those themes. So it can actually be tough. I'm thinking maybe we could even make a sort of open design color example once. I still want to make. I'm just tabbing through. That's not nice. That's not easy on the ice. I would really love to write something about color, but I already know if I dive back into color again, it's so big, and there are so many color tools. I could probably write an article with just tools, and you would be like, hey, that's a nice tool, that's a nice tool. They're all very nice tools, but which ones are you going to use? Well, you're going to use the ones that are simple. So I like looking at 8 shapes, just seeing my palette and knowing what I'm up against. This is really a great way for checking. You can also move them around, by the way. And in the URL, it lists all the colors you can use, so you can even export them to. Here you can copy it, you can change the grid size. There's all these extra options. But it's really useful to check your palette. I think Leonardo is a great way to start with a palette, because you can check a shade. Like right now it's blue, but I could also do it all in green. And now you have all green colors with the same ratios that you had before. So this is a really good starting point. And if you check a website, then of course you check for the ratios. That's what we do. Just tell if a number is right or not. But if you ever make your own palette, I think with Leonardo and 8 shapes, I think you're gonna get a really long way. And I'd love to hear what your favorite tools are. I think I've told you more than enough by now. So if there are any questions from the attic of accessibility, I guess, please let me know. Is there something you would like to know about color, contrast, creating palettes? You can always tweet at me, and I'll share anything. I'm easy like that. Oh, and also, if you're not following yet, please follow me on Twitch, because that makes sure that in the near future you can probably change the quality of the stream. I don't know why you need to follow me for that, but it's a thing. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, but if anything comes up, please ask. I'll share these tools also on Twitter, share the recording, and if anything comes up, I'll try to share it there as well. Next week, I hope to have somebody else presenting as well. My head is spinning right now. Well, that's part of the goal, I guess. When it stops spinning, please ask me. No, it's that's the thing, you know. My head was blown the first time I learned what ratios actually were and what the word ratio meant in this. It had such an impact on creating palettes. It had such an impact on creating palettes, and I dove in even more, and it got even worse. And it's so strange, because I see this number. This is like the first thing we check. You know, it's so easy. You open up a website, Amazon.com, and you open your inspector tools, and you go to your X or whatever automated tool you have, and you say analyze. And it starts running. Pretty long, probably. Too long, probably. Links out must have this. Oh, no issues here. But almost every website you will find something about color contrast. You know, all the basic. Here it says basic practice, maybe. No, not even. I'm very curious to check a random Dutch website. But it's the first thing we check. You know, we check this number. 3.0, 4.5, just the smacking around this number. You don't know what it means, but it's so easy to find. And it's so easy to improve on. Here, elements must have sufficient color contrast. Bol.com. This is the biggest e-commerce website in the Netherlands. It says, get sufficient color contrast. I'm not trashing this website or anything. I just know this is what many sites do wrong. And I say highlight it, and you see this word select. It's green on a white background. See, happy white backgrounds. And it's really easy. I can write a report now. It says, hey, dear UX designer, you chose this color. This color is 3.0, green on a white background. Please fix it so it's at least 4.5. I don't need to know what it means. The UX designer probably uses the tool as well. Then they have a next one. Ah, that's the next part of the text also. Yeah, 3.79 on a white background is not sufficient. Please increase the size of the text or make it darker. What do you have here? A red on white. Red on white is also often bad. This is good enough for normal text, but not good enough for large text, but not for normal text. Not sufficient. Please increase the contrast. Same for this advisory price. It has a contrast of 3.68 on white. It's so easy. But the actual thing is that if you create a palette, it's gonna take a lot of work. So, yeah, maybe I should come up with a better image than this as well. I've got something to work on. Let me know if anything comes up, any questions, if you need another tool. Need even more tools than this. There's so much to say about color, and I'll check you out all next week. I should have another presenter. I'm talking to several people. I'm also very, very open to suggestions. But next week we're going to have another presentation. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you all again then. See, I start tripping on my words. This is a great moment to stop. About 1 hour in, tripping on my words. I thank you very much. Good night.